Today's Glitch in the Matrix video is brought to you by this photograph of a penguin. And if you have a true scary story you want to send my way, go to astheravendreams.com/submit or check the links down below, and of course, thank you. I've seen several phone glitches on this sub, and I hope it's the right place. These events happened between 2019, 2020, and 2021. My family and I use Facebook Messenger to talk to each other whenever we can't be in the same area of the house or the town. But because I like headphones and I put out music very loud, I don't hear my parents calling me. And in the past, we had neighbors complaining about us yelling too loudly. So my parents started calling me either on Facebook Messenger or on my regular phone. In 2019, I was living at my aunt's house, going to college, when I got 2 regular phone calls within months in between from my mom. The first one I had just managed to get away from a potentially dangerous situation, and I was walking quickly to my bus, and my phone rang, only for me to hear static that caused a headache, and then hung up. Once I was safely away from when I was potentially in danger, I called my mom back, asking her why she called me. My mom then told me she was thinking of calling me, but that she hadn't called me. Then I told her what happened, and she just told me to be thankful for that call and just focus on moving forward with my life. The second time this happened, in 2019, I was cooking dinner at home and I got a call. And since my aunt's landline was damaged, and sometimes calls wouldn't go through or receive said calls, we had agreed that if they call me and leave it ringing for 3 rings, it means they had been trying to call me on the landline, and that I needed to call them. So, this happens. My mom calls me and lets it ring 3 times. I get to the landline and I call home, only to be told by my dad that Mom had been talking to my Uncle Thomas on her cell phone for the past hour. I was confused, and later in the night, I talked with my mom about it and asked her if she called me at 8 p.m., but she hadn't. Then, 2020 comes. We're in quarantine, and I was in my room. I was healing from a TBI, so I wasn't allowed on my phone, and I was working on relearning how to write when my phone rang, and I peeked over to see that it was my mom. Thinking that my mom might have needed toilet paper because I'd heard her go to the bathroom, I carefully walked to the storage room, grabbed 3 rolls of toilet paper, and carefully again went to the bathroom and asked her what she wanted. Confused, my mom said she was thinking of calling me because she had run out of toilet paper, which I instantly handed to her. Mom then joked about our mother-daughter bond. A few months later, in 2020, I'm fully healed from my TBI, and I'm cleaning out the house, vacuuming, when I feel my phone vibrate, and I look to see my mom calling me. I put the vacuum aside because I'm thinking it was close to 3 p.m., which is my country's mandatory quiet time up to 6 p.m., and maybe she was trying to tell me to give up trying to finish the house before 3 p.m., or maybe she just wanted something. So I looked around the house and I asked my sister, only to find my mom putting out the laundry, and I had seen her phone on the radio in the kitchen while looking for my mom. And once again, she never called me. And now we are reaching 2021. I'm in my room doing some chores, and I hear my computer and phone chime with the Facebook Messenger video call, and I look to see my mom calling me. I got up and went to look for my mom, only to be told by my dad that Mom was out with her friends for coffee. So I called her and asked her, and she told me she had no Wi-Fi to call me on Facebook. Another time, I'm again in my room, and again, Mom calls me on my regular phone. And I ran with my phone to my mom in the bathroom and showed her my device, and she showed me hers. She wasn't calling me. I picked up and put it on speaker, only to hear this whizzing sound you hear when two microphones are close together, and it hurts our ears. And then, my mom got a nosebleed. She gets semi-frequent nosebleeds, but there was no prior indication, such as a headache or her sneezing like there normally is. It was during Easter, and Mom and I were playing cards in the kitchen with our phones next to us, when my phone vibrates again with a call from my mom. Confused, I try to pick it up, but my phone is stuck, and then shuts down, and my phone's hot. The last time this happened was when I was in my room and getting another call from Mom, and annoyed I get up to go to my mom and ask her what she wants, and, confused, she again told me she hadn't called me. I don't know what's happening to my phone, but this only happens with my mom's phone number and mine, and only on my phone, never on my mom's. Are there any ideas on how this would be possible to happen so many times? I told my sister to join this sub because we think these things are interesting. And we got to talking about weird things that happened in the past, and we realized that we had experienced one and just didn't tell each other about it because it freaked us both out a little bit. We'd completely forgotten about it until we got to talking. In high school, we drove our parents' hand-me-down car after they bought a new one. It was kind of a piece of crap, but it got us around. On the way home from school, one day, one of the tires went flat. We weren't far from home, but we had to pull over, and it just so happened that one of the police officers in town we lived in, at the time, drove by and helped us. It's a really small town, and everyone knows each other, so it wasn't a big deal. Kind of like a modern-day Mayberry. Small-town people, small-town cops that really just patrolled to help with things like that. Not a lot of crime. You get the picture. The front passenger side tire had gone flat. He got the spare out of the trunk and changed it for us in like 10 minutes. We chatted a little bit, and he followed us around the corner and up the street to where we were living at the time. We called my stepdad to let him know and told him which tire it was, and forgot about it the rest of the afternoon. He stops on the way home and gets the tire because he had everything he needed to change it at the house. He went outside and then came back in, and he said that the front passenger side was completely fine and that the spare was on the driver's side. We kind of looked at each other and we were like, no, it was definitely the passenger side. So we walked out and around to the passenger side and pointed and were like, look, that's the spare. He gave us an odd look and he was like, no, it's not. And we walked over to the driver's side and sure enough, the Dinky Donut spare was now on the driver's side. I very distinctly remember it being the passenger side because we were headed home, and he had jacked up the car from the passenger side and changed it. My sister, at the time, decided maybe that we just didn't remember it correctly, but I knew that we had. She told me yesterday that it had bothered her every time it crossed her mind because she was sure it was the passenger side as well. He changed it, and we kept driving like usual. It freaked me out for a couple of weeks, and then I just wanted to not think about it. This was about 20 years ago, and back then you were just called crazy. And like my sister let herself believe, we just chalked it up to not remembering it correctly. There's no way that it wasn't, and we were too scared at the time to tell each other that we knew it wasn't, because it made no sense. No one had touched the car or even been home until my stepdad got home with a new tire. I know it's kind of silly, but we're both very adamant that we know that it was an anomaly of some sort. We still can't explain it, and it still boggles my mind. We wound up telling my mom about it, and it got a little bit weirder after that. The car eventually went to one of my brothers before it completely broke down. He had a similar experience that he told her about 10 years ago, except it was the back passenger tire, and when he went to go get it changed, they were confirming with him that it was the back passenger tire because the spare was on the back driver's side. He had changed it himself to get to the tire shop, and he wasn't able to explain it. I don't know what it means, but now the same anomaly has happened to the same car twice with the same scenario. It kinda sends a little shiver down my spine thinking about it. I want to preface this by stating that while I enjoy reading spooky stories or watching unexplained videos, I firmly consider myself a skeptic that will occasionally indulge in the paranormal side of things purely out of fun. With that being said, my skepticism is the reason why I'm also making this post. It's a bit of a rant / me venting because I cannot reasonably explain this experience. Last year, in the middle of the summer, my girlfriend and I bought ourselves a new car. We fell in love with it at the dealership and all the features it came with, despite it being a little pricey. Completely worth it. Months in, we would still find ourselves gasping in excitement whenever we'd come across a feature or quirk that made us appreciate the car a little more. One of these things was the little visor extensions. Not sure if there's a proper name for them, but you know how some visors have a little black slide that helps extend over more? Yeah, that thing. We came across it October 23rd, 2020. I know the exact date because that day we drove out to pick up the new iPhone 12 Pro that had just come out. The color configuration I wanted was sold out in the Apple Store in my city, so I had to go pick it up a city over. Now, the drive itself isn't bad. About 40 minutes to and from, but traffic was heavy that day, and we had to drive slowly on the way back against the sun. I pulled the visor down to block the sun, and when it didn't, I looked for the visor extension. And boom, problem solved. I probably did this rather dramatically or something, because my girlfriend noticed and immediately did that little gasp and quickly once again mentioned how great the car was while pulling hers out. Something so small and simple, but our previous car didn't have one, and the one she owned before she met me didn't either. So she flipped her stuff at finally having one. Again, sometimes it's the small things in life. We drove home that day, and God knows how long it was before we were once again driving into the sun, but we did. The next time I found my retinas being blessed by the sunlight, I pulled down the visor and quickly reached for the extension because it was once again not going to be enough. I paw at it for a little bit, looking for the extension and trying to grip it, all while my eyeballs are being cooked. After a few seconds, I flip it back up and then down again. Nothing. I'm kind of baffled at it not being there, and I quickly let my girlfriend know, and I ask her to pull hers down to check. Nope, not one on that either. Okay, we're definitely questioning some things at this point, but we're fine. It must have been the other car we used to drive, right? We come home and check, but no. That car doesn't have it either. Even if it did, that was not the car that we had driven that day to pick up my new phone. There was no other car, no Uber, no rental, nothing. It was our current white Lincoln SUV. It had a visor extender. It is by far the one glitch in the Matrix moment for us, and I still cannot explain it. Every time a conversation about this topic comes up, I find myself frustrated at how I have to retell something that I just cannot understand. Part of me wishes that it was something that only one of us had experienced, because then I would be able to write it off as a false memory or a dream. But having both of us experience this makes it even more mind-screwing. I don't go that much these days. However, when I was a kid, every Saturday in the summer months, my father and I would gather up our rods and tackle box. We'd stop off to buy some night crawlers and head down to the river and fish. The fish were always plentiful on the river, from bluegill, catfish, the occasional black bass. We would sit on this old fallen tree trunk, drink sodas, and munch on junk food for a few hours before packing it in, returning home and then proceed to clean, pack, and freeze our catch for future meals. On one particular Saturday morning, however, things were a little bit off. A morning cloud cover promised to move on by mid-morning for a sunny afternoon, so we packed our sunscreen to apply later once the sun came out. We got our worms as always and headed to the river. Thanks to the cloudy sky, the fish were more active than usual, and we had no trouble reeling them in, so much so that our bucket was filling up faster than usual when, as predicted, the clouds began to disperse, and by noon the sun was shining. As we readied to pack up, a shadow overhead caught my attention. A bald eagle had taken up a roost in the tree by the river and was keeping a keen eye on us, and I happened to glance up and catch his vision. I was about to grab my father's attention when I happened to glance at the patch of the sky peeking through the leaves just behind the eagle, and I saw something very, very weird. The blue sky, it had a kind of grid overlaying it, similar to graph paper, a kind of bluish cross-hatching, and not the same shade of blue as the sky, but rather a few shades darker. I stepped a few feet to my left to look at an unobstructed view of the sky, and it was clear blue. But stepping back under the canopy of the trees, there was a grid. I pointed it out to my father, and he was positively gobsmacked, thinking that it might have just been a spider web perhaps strung up between branches. He moved closer, and he couldn't see anything there. Feeling very weirded out by this anomaly, we decided to go get some lunch at Burger King and headed home. This event happened in the 90s, long before talks of glitches. However, that event has stuck with me, and I now believe that what we experienced that day, some kind of glitch, it allowed us to see behind the veil of our reality for just that one section of the sky. What do you all think? So, I have a small, white Havanese named Nikki who likes to weave through my legs and trip me as I walk. She's either got separation anxiety, or she just loves to be around humans. She follows whoever she's next to wherever they go throughout the house. It's always apparent that she's around me because not only is she clingy, she wears a collar with a tag that jingles. One day, I was standing in the living room of my house and she was standing behind me. I physically saw her beside my leg. I talk to her sometimes, like, "Hey cutie, what are you doing?" etc. and then I started walking down the hall, and I could hear her walking beside me. I paused in the hallway just before my room, and she sat beside me. The jingling stopped. I think I forgot something and was trying to remember. I hate when someone playing the game cancels my actions. Anyways, I turned to enter my room, and she was sitting in the center of my room just staring at me. Now, she does this a lot. She'll sit across the room from me or down the hall and just stare. She'll remain eerily still and just stare until she's tired and then goes to sleep, which is very creepy at night. But we can have staring contests for a while before she loses interest. She's always been kind of creepy in that way. And she doesn't bark. It's super rare that she'll bark because she only barks at the TV or a squirrel outside. So she stared at me, making my body erupt into goosebumps. There was no way that she could have left my side and walked over to the center of my room because A, I would have heard her collar jingling, B, the time between me seeing her by my leg and then turning to my room and seeing her again was a matter of a second or two. I remember doing a few double takes and wondering how she's suddenly in my room. I wasn't on my phone or anything. I was just standing in the hallway. It's weird, and I can't explain it, but maybe my dog can teleport? It weirded me out, but she's such a strange, alien-esque type of dog. I just kind of accepted it after about 10 seconds of uncertainty. Since then, she hasn't done a full-blown teleportation per se, but she does appear in rooms when I hadn't noticed her there before. That I typically just chalk up to being used to the sound of her collar and therefore blocking it out subconsciously, and then getting startled when I physically see her. I've had 2 major glitch experiences. I'll post the other one after this, but the magnet one happened a few months ago. My partner and I had just moved into a new apartment that has a sliding barn door to our bedroom. It didn't like to stay completely shut, so I decided to stealthily glue 2 powerful magnets opposite of each other, where, when the door was closed, it would hopefully be strong enough to hold it in place. The track for the door is pretty high above my head and very awkwardly located, so I was trying to make sure the placement was correct before I officially, forever, glued the magnet down. This is where it gets weird. I am a naturally cold person, so I'm always wearing long sleeves and long pants. That day, I had on sweatpants where the leg cuffs are tight, and a long hoodie that came over the waist of my pants. This is important, I promise. Essentially, there was no way anything could get into my pants without me lifting the hoodie and then pulling my waistband from my body. My partner was watching my progress a few feet away. I went to triple check that I was putting it in the right place, and it wasn't facing the wrong way when it slipped from my fingers. We both watched it fall, and I kind of used my body to slow it, like soccer players do to get the ball under control. It clearly bounced from my chest to my belly to down my inner leg, and it settled behind my inner ankle inside my pant leg. Since the bottom of the sweats are tight, it didn't just fall onto the floor once it got to the bottom. It never hit the ground, so it couldn't have bounced up. It literally bounced off the outside of my body and then ended there. My partner looked at me very confused, and I stood there with my eyes and mouth wide. She asked where it went, and I slowly lifted my leg, turned it towards her, and pulled my pant leg up for the magnet to fall out onto the floor. There was no way it went into my pants because my hoodie was over my waistband, and it didn't bounce back up and go into the neck hole of my hoodie and then down my body, so I don't know. I really can't explain it. This just happened a few moments ago. I'm currently on the metro bus heading home, sitting about dead center of the vehicle. So, 4 rows back from the front entrance and the driver with the automated fare collector next to him. Since the start of the route, I was the only person riding, and it had stayed that way until we got closer to the city, and a woman boarded. I was just kind of in my own little world, listening to music on my headphones, but for whatever reason, I started watching her fiddling with the bill acceptor, trying to get it to accept crinkled dollars. She struggles for some time and finally gets her fare in, and then she turns my way to walk down the center aisle toward the seats. This is when it gets weird. She, phases forward a good 10 steps down the aisle to about where I'm seated. I don't mean that she moved super fast or took a giant step or she somehow looked closer than she was. I mean, 1 second she's at the front of the bus, and the next, she's halfway down the aisle of the bus. This woman moved half an entire bus length in less than a second. If it were a film, it would have looked like a handful of frames were cut out, and then the reel was spliced back together. After that, she just casually continued to the back of the bus. I wasn't sleepy or anything like that. I don't even think I blinked. It was just a super weird event in an otherwise boring bus ride. So that was this week's Glitch in the Matrix collection, and hopefully you all enjoyed it. I know that I did. It was a really good collection this week, as always, though. These stories are always very, very interesting. These ones this week were definitely weird. The car visor one really got to me. The phone call one got to me, too. That one's awkward. The grid in the sky, the magnet, all of them really just very, very interesting stories. So a huge thank you to everyone who lets me use their stories or submit stories my way. Always appreciated. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider hitting that thumbs up button. You can also subscribe to the channel if you're new, or leave me a comment down below with the lovely word of the week. I need a song for word of the week or something. Anyways, last week's word of the week, I'm not going to say it because that confuses people, but all of the entries are on the screen right now, I think. Haha. Anyways, yes, all the entries are on the screen right now. Huge thank you to everyone who submitted a word my way. You guys are amazing. Now, this week's word of the week isn't necessarily difficult, but it's inspired by a good friend of the channel named Derringer. This week's word of the week is retro. And that's right. Call me out for using the word retro a lot on a stream, and that will be your word of the week, damn it. Anyways. Retro means retroactive, involving, relating to, or reminiscent of an earlier time, retrospective, of or relating to the past. Such as, I have a Pac-Man coffee mug, and man, that mug is legit retro. You can't use that sentence, you will be disqualified if you do, unless you actually have a Pac-Man coffee mug, but you'll have to prove it to me in a picture, so anyways. Alright, friends, I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I hope I'll see you in the next video. But until then, sleep well.